Sara is a storytelling type. So Sara does two things. One is storytelling, and then knowing everything about codes in America. You know, as a sort of a little sideline. And Bruce is the other person that actually posts perfectly formed texts that actually are of tremendous value. But before this, Sara has for years been working on a kind of community that we used to build in America all the time by the hundred, that is the very model of lean. And quite a few of them survive. And so this book that she was doing, and that we're now, I think, incredibly pleased to help move along, should be understood that this isn't some idea that we, the leaners, had. She was doing this all alone and all along. And she drives all over America to study these places. In case you're wondering what to do on Sunday, if you have the chance to go see Chautauqua, New York, it's probably the best example of this kind of place. But in the meantime, it's only I think it's what, 70 miles away or less. But Sara will show you what she was doing, and I repeat, prior to the Lean Urbanism Initiative. She's one of the, just like Mark, she was a contributor rather than a follower.
Okay.
And if you need an incredibly competent architect, here she is.
I went down to Martha's Vineyard to the camp meeting ground there, and I was blown away by how this created community in its essence, in its layout, in its buildings. And then I found out there are many more of these, and I thought, I've got to track this down.
Since 2008.
Since 2008, yeah. Well, I was finishing up another one of your problems. I was doing a lighting study of lighting the transects, and I did a year staying at very late hours in cities and towns photographing. And I thought the wind-up will be illumination night at Martha's Vineyard, when they light all these places. But
I forgot to say she's a lighting consultant as well.
Right. So anyhow, but I've crafted this for us to talk about lean, and I must say it is an evolving thing. I mean, I'm coming up with realizations on what this is about, even, you know, last night when I was working on this PowerPoint. So it's interesting looking stuff. This is a 10-foot wide cottage, and it was renovated by a guy. It probably dates from the 1870s, probably. It's beautiful inside. There's a little bedroom up here, which we'll see later. He also did the one next door. And steep stairs, 10 risers. But it feels just right when you're in it. It doesn't look weirdly small. It's an unusual looking house, but no one looks at that and says, oh, 10 feet wide. I can't live in it because it looks great. And the one next to it is the same width or maybe a foot narrower. Now, in the interiors of them, they seem not too bad a size. This is the interior inside the diamond thing. And because they're built with knee walls. So this grabs a lot of the old way we built and some of the wisdom of it that's been lost by codes. And the reason we don't do balloon frames anymore, does anyone know why that is? It's because they aren't fire stopped easily. They can be fire stopped, but we don't do them. But so you get this little knee wall, and so then when you go your steep pitch, it doesn't seem so enclosed. But I'm getting ahead of myself. I'm hoping this works out. Oh, no, there's more on this one. This is my collection of 10-foot wide ones. And I started studying them in their form and how it works. This thing is precisely a geometry. This is the diamond cottage that you've got to study. You think you can draw it yourself, draw it and get it right first thing. No, you've got to go back and really pick it up. This other one, this one needs help. But it looks like the right scale. This is 10 feet wide. These are 18 inches high. You would think 3 feet. But somehow, these are like 1'8" wide, these windows, 6'3" door. But it's perfectly comfortable, really nice and charming. But I've gotten ahead of myself because they started with tents. These were camp meeting grounds. People came together. This is where I've taken my latest leap on this. Go ahead.
Can you tell us whose land it is and how they got the lot there and why they're
I will.
Okay, good.
How long do you have? Now, Yes, because that's an interesting part of it too. The camp meeting ground started, the earliest one that's still in existence, 1794, right after the Constitution. So they kind of track the evolution of this country, really. And some of them were federal land grants, federal land trusts. States chartered these things as land trusts. So the basic start out of these was land as a land trust in which the association owned the land, or the group that did it, and you got to own your campsite. And so if you were, this is in New Jersey, they still do the canvas tents in New Jersey, and you can lease them. They have 99-year leases on them frequently.
Is that a tent?
That is a tent. That is a canvas tent.
So they begin as tents?
They began as tents, and they still have them in some locations, and there is an evolution of the form. So here, when you came here to New Jersey, this is what it looks like in the winter. They have the platform, there's a little building in the back that has the bathroom, the kitchen, and probably stores the canvas. And they put those up. Martha's Vineyard, this is one of the earlier styles. It's a platform with a cottage on it, and that's roughly the proportions of it. They are typically, floor-to-ceiling, tongue and groove boards, nothing more. They've got a little bit of a timber frame at the corners, maybe sometimes one vertical inside it, depending on the length of the thing, or one post inside. But so the walls are literally an inch thick. And I mean, this one probably is 1840s. But here's one of the very first one. Wait, let's go forward. This is Ossining, New York, Camp Woods. This is 1804. You can see the initial form of these. You've got the central area and then the tents around it. And you begin to see, if you look closely, if this is hard to do, they begin to go off into small enclave areas beyond that. And that's because part of what this thing, I believe that instead of this being people retreating into nature, to experience spiritual renewal, that actually they're retreating looking for community. When you see what's become of these are a couple of early ones. This is that same thing. This is that Camp Woods from 1804. And now, this is currently, it has a couple of streets, but there's still a lot that's basically pedestrian. And it's built around little individual spaces at work. This is Camp Etna in Maine. And so it was creating a place. And then when that didn't work, it was also very generative. The first year you go and you're trying to figure out how this thing works. This is a new invention of the camp meetings. It was peculiarly kind of an American thing. And so they'd go and set it up, and it was the initial urban design might have been the campfire. How far the back you sit from the fire, who sits next to you, who sits across from you, who you have eye contact with. And this is simply how that began to evolve into, okay, we have a speaker and we have tents, and then we have other things we want to do. It's almost like in this room, a similar thing, the back row where people are walking back and forth. A lot of business happens, but the official stuff happens in here. Same with the camp meeting ground. You get your central area, but the real stuff where people are hanging out and going on is frequently elsewhere, which we'll get to that later. There are pedestrian-only paths through here in which the vehicle is not even a feature. In most of these 1804, this was laid out before trains even. And trains did have an impact on this, even before cars. When you get to, this is what happened in New Jersey. I thought I was through with this thing until I went to New Jersey last spring. In New Jersey, they were really the intersection of town planning with the camp meeting grounds. This is Pitman, New Jersey, which known well to you, this is the start of this town. There was very little here. Here's the train line. You get off, here's the main street, which kind of matches in type. You walk right down here, and this is the camp meeting ground.
It's called a camp meeting ground, that's the...
Yes. They had camp meetings. I'm kind of jumped all ahead because we're compressed down to 20 slides. It was, a lot of it was Methodist, some of it was spiritualist. Lilydale, which is also about 70 miles from here, is the spiritualist camp meeting ground. And then you have Adventists, there's some Baptists that have tried them. So there's a couple of, this was probably, this, I think this was a Methodist one.
How many are
There are 1,000 of them left. There used to be 3,000. And you kind of, it's like, it was stunning to me. I mean, I thought there was one, like, there are 10 of them in Massachusetts that I've now gone to. There's a lot of them in New York. New York State was really the start of a lot of this, because the burned over counties, and that back in the Great Awakening, back in the early 1800s, late 1700s, where there's a great deal of revivalism.
Did you study who generated them? Was it a minister? Was it, how organic was it? How top down was it? Is there anything you can draw?
Yeah. The Methodists with John Wesley was in Britain at the time, or England perhaps it was then. They were generating it, but Francis Asbury, the bishop, who was really sent over here to spread Methodism in the United States, he was considered an enemy of the state during the Revolution, so he kind of holed up. But after that, he began to send out the circuit riders, and they sent circuit riders spreading the Methodist word all over and doing these revivals. And they were essentially, initially they were in town centers in the churches, but they quickly, they attracted like 5,000 people to one of these in Kentucky on the frontier in the 1790s. So they quickly had to adapt from, going to the little community church to having to sort of find land in the countryside.
They're religious universally, as far as you've mentioned, but do they actually do drinking and having fun and dancing?
It varies. Okay, it also varies over time. In the early times, 1800s, it was about revivalism, and you went out there was preaching. People expected to have religious ecstatic experiences, falling down and, going into speaking in tongues, etc. And it was a major thing. Now, when you get closer to, it's starting to fade out a little bit, because the regular Methodists sort of began to shun these evangelical or revivalist Methodists. And then the Civil War came, and the whole kind of tenor of the country changed. It was much more, most people are in mourning in the country. And there's actually one camp meeting ground, not this one, this is both in New Jersey, that was founded like 3 weeks after the Gettysburg, and it was, very close in proximity. So you don't know, but it changed them quite a bit. They became less about revivalism, more about, preaching, whatever.
Were there any massive fires or floods?
Yes, there were. So, one of the biggest tragedies in these is the loss of these. And there's one I photographed in New Hampshire in 2000.
They're inherently dangerous, are you saying?
It's a mix. If you were in it. No, there was one in New Hampshire, they lost 53 cottages in 1 hour. And you know what the real cause of that was? The propane tanks went up and went airborne into the roofs of others.
How many people died?
None.
Because you can step out, there's a threshold.
No, a lot of times they happen off season. When there's some people there year round, the fires don't get going. Frequently these are seasonal. The ones I met this guy, there's a really nice camp meeting ground in Connecticut, and he's the 1 year round person. He said a fire broke out, and had it not been there, we'd have lost the entire thing.
But let me just say one thing. They have setbacks and so forth. Regular suburban houses would have also burnt, except they're inhabited. So there's an aspect
We have
to them.
density in cities.
Excuse me?
We have density in cities. Like we have, buildings right next to each other. Then
Yeah.
yeah, and
The ones that are inhabited, like Pacific Grove, California.
yeah, and we
no
could,
problem.
right. Yeah, the people in New Hampshire were worried. They thought we'll never able to rebuild this kind of thing, because that's one in which there were footpaths is the way you get to all of
So
them.
when they burn, are they allowed to rebuild them?
No, we'll get into that. I would mention this is a camp called Malaga, and it looks. I think I put it on one slideshow because it's similar to the Mormon block, but these blocks are 105 feet long. There was a pattern to this was laid out. They laid out 15 foot wide by 30 foot deep campsites. They say that this block is the only one that's original, and I think they changed the layout even from the very beginning, the original one.
It looks like the size of a Mormon block. All of that is in one Mormon block.
It probably would be. I mean, if you've got 49 blocks and they're all 100, it's 105 feet and it's 10 foot 6 width for the roads everywhere. And yet, it doesn't have pictures of the street. I may have pictures.
Sarah, can I
Go
ask
ahead.
about, were these just assigned by the season initially, and then they graduated into leaseholds, the individual parcels, or how did that evolve? Because I can't imagine that you began with the 99
No, you're right. But no, in first, I mean, you've got to imagine that this is why I was saying it's generative. They learned, it changed, it adapted. They came, and it was so popular because at first people were sleeping in wagons, underneath wagons, or pitched tents. You saw some of the earlier things. As they formalized, I found some of the early records of these things. So, the first year they came and did this. And then they got people to lay out the tent sites, the areas of them. And you could then sign up to have that as your tent site. I'm not sure what the terms on the earlier ones were, but in the ones in which people now have more vested value in their cottage, I've heard 99-year leases pretty typically, which leaves them in problems because when these things are generational and they get passed down, the next person inherits it's in Michigan and the camp is in Connecticut, they don't show up. And the smarter camp meeting grounds have said, if you're not show up for 3 years, we own the cottage because they're losing them. There's a great one in Willimantic. They've lost 10 cottages just by teardowns, and they were unique. Did it go off? Yeah. They were unique in their architectural experimentation in them. This is the other thing this is like another model for self-build because they were small scale. There were some fairly standard things. They wanted to put them up quickly, but then they wanted to decorate them. I don't have any pictures in this particular show of the most rudimentary ones, which are just a simple box. The concept of the tent is the tent, there's the public side, and the back side is the informal side. That's where the cooking happens and all the other, socializing stuff. The fronts are more formal and we're toward the speaker or the formal activity. So here, this is up in Maine. The tent sites in Maine were 16 by 24. And these are exactly laid out within those dimensions. Those originally were canvas. This is down there in the vineyard. So what you get when you do this, the sites evolve and you begin to have kind of interesting streets going on, very narrow. This is another, the big ring, they had also association cottages where a regional church would come and build dorms so everyone would go there and stay. Because the camp meeting, some of the early ones in the one in Kentucky in the late 1700s, they were there for 6 weeks. And there was a time when the population was only 500 in the county. So, this is sort of an evolving thing. Let's see. Here we go. Okay, so here, Andres wanted to say, are any of these built new? The yellow one on the right here is brand new. The guy really went and researched it. He went a little bit wild with the color, but in the way he was able to do it, he got to talking to the local building inspector and explained what they were doing, and that he allowed them to build it. So it's a little bit off. And the one on the left is sort of just a natural or vernacular one that someone just built.
Or is it fuller on trees between those two houses?
Yes. Cut no trees if there's another rule to these things, it's cut no trees. And you'll see coming up. This is they call that the vernacular cottage. This is up in Maine. And a guy came along and he said, I'm going to make up a set of standard plans for these things so I can sell them. And I've got the folder that he's dead, but his wife is around. And he was selling for $10,000 a piece. And you could, the brochure is kind of interesting. He said, you can order it with the door on the front or the side, or we can put a dormer on it, or you can build your own foundation, or we can provide them. And this one is just up on little precast things. So and there's about 4 of these in that camp meeting. It's the only time I found where they tried to make a business out of it. These probably date from the 60s. The 1960s. Got to be specific. Okay, and some of the things I wanted to show, a lot of the thinking in these is very lean, a lot of the detailing. This one, I keep saying, Steve Muzon, I was talking to him, I said, when you're dealing with this vernacular building, sometimes you have to sit and stare for a long time to figure out what's even happening with them. And I said, in this case, this one, I looked at it for a long time, I thought, what's this? And I thought, it's a metal rod. I thought, oh, what's this? Like 2 angles. I thought, they've made a truss there, and they've done a handrail that is in fact a truss. And whether or not it actually carries this floor, these things get framed with very thin members. If I have an architect and I was doing a deck up there, I'd probably have LVL, manufactured lumber and everything. But no, because they combine their thinking, so it's both decorative, it's structural, and they can use minimal materials. I mean, it's a brilliant concept. This one next to it uses brackets also structurally, which we frequently just use them decoratively, really did it. Now, a typical thing you'd find with these is with the windows. I don't know if you can make out here, there is no trim. They had put this wood in vertically, they cut out the hole, they mounted the window from the inside, same with the door. In this case, you can see it was painted, and the only reason you'd put something like that on was for decoration. This is the front of this cottage. This one got torn down since I was down there last year. This is an inside view, one of the cottages in Martha's Vineyard, kind of demonstrating what it looks like on the inside, because the window is mounted to the inside. In this building, I actually saw there was one post going up on one side, but other than that, there's it's just attached in, which is very efficient. When you buy a window now, it's got all this stuff, but the real guts of it is just the part that they bought and attached.
Sarah, if somebody wanted to build one of these villages now, and I know at least one person in this room who might be interested.
Yeah.
What would they have to do to get what would they have to do to get it done? In terms of codes, is there anything they can fly under, such as a camp or a meeting ground code or a historic precedent? What would happen if one wanted to build something like that?
When you start from the ground now?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's sort of a Buddhist new urbanist sort of camp.
As I said, I've said it, I think one of these places I said, this is the precedent for trailer parks, for bungalow courts, for resorts of all kinds.
But it's lighter than that. It's more of a tent, more of a campground.
Yeah.
And the other thing is that these were all, I don't know about all of them, but a lot of them were, as you say, really for the purposes of a group of people that had a certain common bond or interest that brought them together.
Yeah, there's affinity, I must say, but when you get to the vineyard, which became vast and popular quickly, they did have commercial groups, establishments that put up. I had some old pictures from Library of Congress where they had giant tents for dining, and those were kind of other concessions. So they became more commercial because they had to support this. Before the railroads, people were coming on wagons and in Martha's Vineyard by boat. But after the railroads, they were kind of coming on foot via train. So they had to have other support things there. They weren't trucking in all their food as much.
Can you answer the question about
Yeah,
how
the
someone
question
would
I
do it?
have.
Oh,
Okay.
continuing on.
And may I just, because I think one of the things we want to do, it's interesting historically,
Yeah.
but it's all about
How do you-
reapplying this. For example, it just occurred to me as you said, tent. What if I built one of those and called it a tent? I mean, I'm allowed to live.
Absolutely.
I'm allowed to live in a cloth thing, and it probably doesn't have a rule about a second floor. And the tent can be next to another tent, right?
Right.
So we just said, well, this is a tent. Oh, could I please upgrade it to wood?
Yeah.
But it goes in for permitting as a tent.
Where do you like to live on a tenant?
Or call it a
Any
campground.
No, not a
places
tent.
called
This would be a new
camp-
community.
well, camping is
We call
allowed.
this a tent community that we happen to build out of wood. Why would that not be acceptable to the municipality? Because
I don't know, I looked into this in my town, camping, period, is not allowed in the zoning.
I'm not talking about, I'm talking about a building code.
In a building code,
Can I build a tent?
in a building code, it may not actually be a building.
You build a carport and then you put,
You know, there's-
don't put permanent walls.
Well, right, no, but I'm wondering, you know, there is a thing about what constitutes a building and it has to have walls.
I mean, the other direction to go in is
It's an object. It's not really a building. It's like a,
does the religious community aspect get people anywhere? Is that why they've been enabled to stay?
another part, because they are land trusts, and some of them are religious land trusts, and so they pay no taxes. And then the towns get quite, picky about that. I have hit one that got its 501(c) converted to be a recreational 501(c), so they don't pay any taxes either.
Well, I've had a yurt on our property for 10 years. We had a big 30-foot,
Yeah.
round yurt, which is very common. I have a teepee on my property. So and it goes up and down every winter, down, up.
Oh, you
down.
took it down, so it's a temporary building.
Because I live on a hill and it'll get blown into the.
Right.
Where do you live?
I live in Santa Fe, New Mexico,
Exactly.
about 60.
Okay, let's
No,
get back.
a temporary building.
There's a very, very simple, I'm trying to find a patch.
Now we
Okay?
can build these again.
If you can build a canvas tent next to another canvas tent, 3 feet away,
Yeah.
on a wooden platform, and inhabit it legally, could we, and yet they'll say, you can't build this because it doesn't have insulation, because it doesn't have this, because it's made, But if we call this a tent, could we not build it?
These are temporary structures.
Temporary structures, but you do see
These
campgrounds.
are temporary structures.
You can see campgrounds full of metal trailers.
The whole idea is that
Does it
it
have
can go
electricity?
away.
Those
And
are
it's
the
a
issues.
temporary structure, so in that sense, it's not bound by a building code because it's not tied to the ground per se. Even if there is a ground.
What kind of
infrastructure is this? It's to
What?
actually.
Infrastructure.
No, by the
Infrastructure.
way, the entire of Seaside's south side, the entire, all the shops and everything, don't even have footing, they're just sitting there. in the
Right.
ground. And they're exempt from everything.
Brian asked about the infrastructure.
There you go.
Historically, there were some of them that, you still find this, I found a great old picture, not in this show, of course, that is of all the sort of outhouses. There's a circle of cottages, and beyond that's a circle of latrines. But when you get down into North Carolina, there's a really interesting camp meeting ground down there, but they all have their common latrines. But it was actually not a bad device for communities. They had this sort of you did not have bathrooms in the cottages. You had around the campground. And same with the electricity. Most of them have put electricity in by now. The really smart people in 1794 camp meeting ground, it's like when they electrified it in the 20th century, they only put in 20 amp service because they knew that it was not enough to support air conditioning, which meant that people stayed outside, so the sense of community was enhanced. So many of these older communities had so many subtle techniques, which I'm sure they didn't think of it but that way at the time, but like even the common bathrooms enhance community. You're going in the middle of the night, you're going to see someone there, you're seeing people face to face. Some of them had like these wells. Wells were quite common. I remember talking to a woman on the North Shore, and she said, when my husband had this thing, and I moved in, I put in hot water. It was so terrible, there was no hot water. He said, oh, when I was a kid, it was a well. We had to carry the water every day. So that's 20th century stuff. So, the minimal on infrastructure when they can do it. I've seen people go and make these things into condos so they can get access to state funding to put in a group septic fields. So that kind of thing happens. Other than that, and I know the one that has the 20 amp electric service also has bathrooms in each thing. So somewhere along the line they come along and they make incremental upgrades. And I guess this is
With permits? Do they call the inspector? Do they do drawings?
Yes, because one of the other hells for these places is that the inspectors frequently hate them. And they've been forced to put in very expensive septic systems, the one on the North Shore of Boston, because the building inspector really pays them no favors. That town wants this thing to go away. But the one in Denver, North Carolina is National Trust, Historic Preservation, whatever. So they can do what they need to do. And they you go into these rustic straw on the floor cottage down there, which will show up. I probably should move ahead with this. And they've got a toilet in the corner. So it's got indoor plumbing. You don't know about the water, but it's got that. some of the other things you find, this one I think is an amazing, this one, another one opened my eyes on what people were doing then. It was so sophisticated. This one, I met the guy, he's an architect from Philadelphia, he died about a year ago, but he let me go in it, and he had refaced it. Beautiful, the geometry of this one is incredibly precise. You can't even draw this retrofitting unless you get it right on. But this thing here, what that is, and unfortunately I tried to go back in, but he's dead and I haven't been able to get into it. This is a vertical, it looks like it's copper rod. It hangs this floor and the floor below it. So it hangs the floor that comes about here, it hangs the floor that's here. And so that allows them to frame, and it's captured up here in a little couple of metal plates either side of the rafters. And
The rafters aren't tied together this way.
well, then, so the thing that's tying, in this cottage, the thing that's tied together here is a beam that runs along here, and it frames into it. It's only 16 feet wide. I found there's another cottage in that same camp meeting, I suspect there are more, in which the beam is carried, and you can see it's got, this is a different one, it's got like the little turnbuckles on it, and they frame off of it. But this is Maine, they could get good wood. But I thought this guy, the guy that owns this, and he said, oh, this one was knocked over in a storm, because they don't really tie into the foundations that well. They say we're able to just tow it back up plumb, and it was tight, it was true, because it was all tied together, it's all tensioned together. So it allows for, minimal, the wood framing is fairly minimal, the efficiency is really high, and they last because they're so well made. So, and all this stuff makes me think about, well, what am I doing? When I put in big beams and things, why am I not thinking like this anymore? This, I think, is this vernacular mind. This is the trees and house. Trees and houses. And very common, the rules were don't cut a tree, and people would actually go and cut back the roofs. This is this one in, this is Neshoba. We're getting to Neshoba now, Andres. So I have some more trees and houses, and you'd find things, you'd say, why is this thing cut back around here? This one's not. And they would see a tree stump down below and say, oh, as long as that tree was growing, they kept cutting back the rafters to allow it. So now we go to Neshoba, which is, we said, is the other kind of camp meeting. It's the one that is not religiously based, although there's a predecessor for it they seem to have copied. It's about 60 miles away. And I read up on the history of it. But this grew far beyond that. And I guess JT and I are going to be going there. So the old part, it's multiplied out. It's a really interesting, this here, the way this works now, you have like a car street and then a walking street. But it's completely, there's nothing typical about it. You get back here, there's kind of this open area, there's a creek here, the creek has got wonderful houses on it. There is the resemblance to a camp meeting center here on it, but the issue, or the result of this is, when you do the same thing with the spatial relationship, the same thing with the density, you get the same behavior. People do have this communal thing. I mean, this is a communal thing, wandering along walkway.
Now, wouldn't you say that this is the most, the porches have benches built in? The widths of the streets are such that you can speak across the way.
Right.
Would you say this is the most sociable you've seen in the wall? This one?
No. I'm hoping I've got the right slideshow up here, because I had, we're coming to it. This is more pieces of Neshoba. And of course, I haven't been to Neshoba in season, which I'll do this year. This one.
Could you just go back one thing? They're self-destructing with windowless and with air conditioning. These are the
There you
ones.
go. Yeah.
Actually, the first ones, we actually did a master plan for this place like 25 years ago. Because it was doing beautifully, they were growing like this, incredible sociability, very funky, very sociable. And then
I've got some of those.
They began making these Darth Vader windowless ones with air conditioning. And you just cannot believe, like, what happened to the culture?
Here you go.
They wanted to go from one to the other.
Andres, here's your favorite, or maybe I didn't put orange in.
What's going through their head?
Whereas they also have this one on the side.
So are the air-conditioned ones insulated as well, or are they still?
It's
ones-
metal, it's Mississippi, gotta be insulated.
But the other thing they have, is these don't have glass at all. So they're not insulated, but also they're neither hot nor cold, it's a summer place. And what they have is an incredible number of sort of tacked together. This is the ornamental system, this kind of thing, done every which way, which is a kind of southern, or at least southern, warm climate, delicate grill.
This is,
And there are two things that intrigue, this and the angled bench. That angled bench is some kind of southern thing that's
Yes, it
going on
is.
that really works.
yeah, that's funny, I didn't even question it because I've seen it so long.
Yeah.
Because what you need here, I'll go back, because I took this one out of order. You don't need a window, you need privacy, you need ventilation. Let me go back up.
And by the way, the sides often open like this, like the whole side opens out, and they're packed with beds.
Yeah, I've
Packed.
seen a
They're
picture of
just,
that, just like
they're just,
dorm.
it's about packing, it's about,
They're barracks, they're not
they're
houses.
houses, right?
Because the real action is outside. You only go in there when you're crashing and you're just so tired or drunk or whatever. But I understand the shelf is a drinking scene. It can't, how can it be? They regulate that stuff.
I'm not sure there's anything, there is a front back, there's a peculiar front back problem, or non-problem.
Well,
All right, this is Rock Springs. This is the oldest one. It's in Denver, North Carolina. So here you've got the central tabernacle thing. And so when you're sitting around here, you can hear them talk. But the real action is this long ramblas around the outside. And when I first saw this place, out of season, I thought, what, in the 21st century, who would come and spend time in something that looks like this? And not to mention, this is continuously operating since 1794. But then I came back at night, and it's a whole other scene. Here we go. And it is full of people, it is packed. This is the best I can get of the night shot on this one. That's the same scene of that long walk, and it's packed with people. All those things you say about, well, you said, about sound, it's exactly precisely dimensioned so that if you're walking, across talking, you can talk across, you can talk to people coming by. In terms of proxemics, this is public space that's long, or private space that's, short across here. These things now are a little like lanterns. You can begin to see how it makes sense that they did that kind of stuff. And they are mobbed with people. I think there had to be close to 4,000 or 5,000 people when I was there. And you feel a palpable sense of community. It is the most amazing experience to be in that space. Everyone's your friend. You never hear a child crying, because you'll inherently learn how to monitor your voice and the noise that you make. Because you know about how close you are, you know your proxemic space very clearly. So that to me is the densest I've seen, but then I have not seen it the show in season, which I understand. But here's the show. So that is, we're going on to this to show what we see there. Oh, that was the end of the slides. Although I have a few others if you want to run through them quickly. There's that one you saw.
More than a few.
More than a few. This is the next one's coming up. This is Pittman Grove, the center of that circle. What does it look like? Amazing space to be in. And it generates its own form. That house is a Pittman style camp meeting cottage. It kind of floats. It's got a lot of air here. This is one of those little narrow streets that goes to that tabernacle in the center. That's as wide as they are. And those pie wedges back. Pie wedges thing now have sort of come for parking, but they actually stayed in the views. It's a tapestry looking across here with all those oblique roads. They said this was laid out about the 12 apostles, but spatially it's quite a fascinating experience to see that. There's another.
Do you have a picture of that center?
Yes, not on me. Well, it's actually in my little.
It'll be in the book.
Yeah, if you want to see the hour-long version. Okay, we're getting to the end now. This is all in Connecticut. It's called Welcome to the Porch. It's one of the best ones of these I've seen. It's really quite nice. This particular camp meeting, they don't like people to know them. They don't like publicity, so I think I put this in the booklet just to say a camp meeting somewhere in New England. But here's one, but there's different flavors for these things. This is Belgrade, Maine. I kind of like this kind of aspect. It's almost like little vertical salt and pepper shakers.
Yeah, just to point out, could you go to the one in the back, please?
Go back
one
one?
that had the big deck. Okay.
The tree?
I saw one of these in the Neshoba County Fair, having something like 40 or 50 people on that balcony, and I watched it collapse.
And one of the interesting things, I'll never forget it, I saw it across the field, and it was like people were partying. By the way, which actually, they do serve alcohol, I now can confirm that,
There's a
actually.
Hard Rock Cafe cottage.
And what happened is, it collapsed very slowly, like this. And everybody rolled off, laughing. Sort of fell off into the fields, like that. Dozens of people laughing and drinking and protecting their beer cups and everything. And nobody was killed. And there was something about things that fail slowly, instead of cataclysmically. Like when concrete gives, it falls fast and it kills you. When wood collapses, it's usually with a lot of creaking, a lot of stuff. And just,
So
you know,
everyone
and there's
hates
something to
they-
technique that might be something else too.
The triple deckers, they take down 2 decks and they,
Lean collapse.
yeah, one about Great Maine, I wanted to sort of show that there's a variety of these things, and yet they kind of fit in there. This is quite a haunting place, and it was all these little tall, narrow things. It was Seventh-day Adventists, and they were all somewhere else singing with it. I was completely empty, but you could hear singing in the distance. Okay, this is South Jersey. Well, that's North Jersey, that's Mount Tabor, which was also, it was chartered as a religious municipality. That got thrown out. If you want me to quit, I will.
Let me ask you a question.
Go ahead.
Andres,
There's only a couple more.
You asked before how to do one of these now. My question is why?
Well, I think there's 2 levels. One is that there's a lot to be said for building a place like this in terms of lean vacationing. These are very poor people at the time that made a place, particularly, I've only seen one in the Neshoba County Fair, beyond delightful. Just beyond delightful. It's what you did. And by the way, one of the things that happened, which is always to be, you must always notice, is that actually the young people loved it as well as the old. It's tons of fun for the kids. And I think it's one of these things that has very few rules. You know, dogs are fine, don't sell anything, don't scream at night, that kind of thing. So I think it's intrinsically lean. But the other thing is, there's a lesson to be learned here in terms of what you label one thing in order to get something else through.
And to that point, I pulled down the state of Colorado regulations on campsite. And it's pretty short, but this is pretty interesting. That it says temporary structures such as canvas awnings, screened enclosures, or platforms, which are normal camping equipment, may be erected but must be removed when the campsite is vacated. So that would imply that it's temporary as long as you're living in it.
We should ask how that Chautauqua and Boulder happened, which they kind of like.
The Neshoba County Fair was built, there's a school. By the way, the plan looks rather odd. It's not odd at all when you're there, because it's actually working with topography and with existing trees. And there's a square at the center that's very substantial, actually. And what happens is that the reason it's orderly is that somebody gets you the deck. You don't build your deck. Somebody builds the what are they, 14
Platforms.
by 30, the platforms. You get the platform, controls the location. So by subsidiarity, the top, whoever it was that made the decision, this thing isn't going to fall and it's going to be here. And then the rule is you can start with a tent, and I think the rule is that then you can make it out of wood, and then you can do 2 stories. So there's a kind of very simple system.
to do that. We had to write a rule that said don't install air conditioning, which by the way I see very clearly they didn't follow, because these were not there when we did the plan 20 years ago. We said no air conditioning because it destroyed the sociability, it destroyed everything.
Oh,
And,
right.
so what I thought was interesting about this is essentially, how do you label something? Look at how beautiful that is. How do you label something that allows something else to happen? You know, like the parking lot. The streets are labeled parking lots.
I think there's
Which one?
Yes. Somebody that's
yeah, there's kind of an interesting application in Portland where they took, it was a woman who had a lot next door that was, this is in a more urban area, a lot next door that she was concerned what would happen there. She got it rezoned recreational, and now there's 4 tiny homes that are in a courtyard around it. And the reason she's able to do that is they're still all on wheels. So she actually calls it the Tiny House Hotel, and people rent them out on a nightly basis. So by rezoning it recreational and the structures being on wheels, yeah.
I was just following up on that, in the spirit of labeling, you were just looking up and finding out that you had to be continuously occupied or else have to take it down. I'm wondering if there could be like a whole nother layer of people who go around and live in these places when you're not there.
All right,
That's
like
their
a
job.
timeshare.
Yeah.
Well, Airbnb.
It's stuck.
one aspect of this. We were visiting, we were studying these in California. We saw 2 places, one of which I stayed at night. It was done by a new urbanist developer called Keith Rogel. And they had wheels. These were places that had wheels that were covered with decks. You could never tell. They were renting for $660 a night. You know, 1-room shack. And then we went to another one that was actually the luxury version. And I didn't even want to ask how much that cost. They can be completely delightful. One of the things Sarah said at the beginning that I think is very important, Sarah's original presentation, when I saw it, was all about proportion.
Yeah, I've got those are coming up.
And I actually told her, forget about proportion, because we're doing something else that's too refined. But actually proportion is what allows very small buildings to look just right. It kind of honors, or it makes acceptable the small building, which, as you know, is a problem we had in Mississippi. You know, no one wanted a small house because only poor people lived there. But if they're very beautiful, I think what happened with the Mississippi cottages is that they weren't beautiful enough. Because as soon as Bruce Toller bought them and did them right, with the right spacing and the right trim, they became lovely. But when FEMA did them, I mean, they were rock solid, right? But they didn't look good enough.
And they lined up 100 at a time.
Yeah,
Well, you
yeah.
know, on the other hand, some of the richest people in the world live in accommodations like this in Bathano or Hinkley yachts.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it's
Good point.
so. You know, I think
This is when I started studying on this proportion.
you know it's not a question of the actual accommodation. It's a question of you know, the perception.
Once it's at a certain width, they start looking long.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's 24 feet. 24 feet is too big. Most of these things are like 20 feet wide or less. And the height, the frame height, what served forever, what makes it 12 feet. I was talking to someone, I said, how come it's 12 feet? And he said, probably what they have in the lumber yard. It makes sense. 12'4" is something
Sarah.
universal. Yeah.
Sarah, there's a couple of people actually started looking at it.
All right. Enough.
I have a name.